You do not hold a river crossing when you are outnumbered nearly 3-1. This is not opinion. This is military doctrine, written in blood across every conflict in human history. When an attacking force possesses overwhelming numerical superiority, concentrated artillery, and complete air dominance, the defending force does one thing: it retreats. It falls back to better positions. It preserves its strength for another day. There are exceptions, of course. Sometimes terrain makes defense possible. Sometimes reinforcements are hours away. Sometimes retreat means certain annihilation anyway, so you might as well die fighting. But when all factors are equal, when the terrain offers limited advantage, when no help is coming, when the enemy has 42,000 men against your 15,000 and believes victory is already assured, you do not stand and fight. You cannot win. For 3,000 years, military commanders have understood this truth. From the banks of the Granicus to the trenches of Verdun, the mathematics of warfare have remained constant. Superior numbers, properly applied, break inferior forces. Always. The Italians knew this in November 1940. Their generals had read the same military histories. They had studied the same campaigns at their military academies in Rome and Turin. They understood the arithmetic of war. 42,000 Italian soldiers in the 25th Army Corps against 15,000 Greeks in the 8th Infantry Division. Modern artillery against outdated field guns. Complete air superiority against virtually no air support. 3 full divisions, the Ferrara, Siena, and Centauro, against Greek reservists and mountain troops. The Italians did not plan for battle. They planned for a parade. Their intelligence officers had dismissed the Greek defenders as mountain peasants with old rifles. Their logistical teams had prepared for occupation, not combat. Their timetables allowed 3 days to reach Athens, not because they expected resistance, but because armies can only move so fast even when unopposed. Think about what that implies. Think about the level of confidence required to invade a nation and budget 72 hours for complete conquest. But there was one thing the Italian planners had not accounted for. One variable their intelligence had missed. One factor that would turn their 3-day parade into a 7-day nightmare that changed the course of World War II. The Greeks had decided not to run. Major Dimitrios Castlas is 39 years old on the morning of November 2nd, 1940. Born in 1901, he has served in the Greek army for nearly 2 decades, rising through the ranks during the turbulent interwar years when Greece experienced political chaos, military coups, and constant threat of war. He commands the 2nd Battalion of the 5th Infantry Regiment, approximately 800 men, positioned in defensive sectors along the Kalamas River in Epirus, northwestern Greece. Castlas is part of Major General Karalamboos Katsimitros' 8th Infantry Division, the primary Greek force defending the Epirus frontier. Katsimitros is a career officer known for aggressive defense and refusal to yield ground without extracting maximum cost from the enemy. His men are mostly reservists from the Epirus region, farmers who left their fields when the mobilization order came, shepherds who know every goat path in these mountains, merchants from Ioannina and the surrounding towns, teachers, tradesmen, fathers. Many have families within a day's walk of their current positions. For them, this is not an abstract war being fought for distant political goals. This is defense of home, defense of family, defense of the specific valleys where their children live. They know these mountains in a way the Italians never will. They know the Kalamas River. They know where it runs shallow and where it runs deep. They know how fast the current flows after autumn rains. The Kalamas River is not impressive. In summer, you can wade across it easily, the water barely reaching your knees. But it is November now, and autumn rains have swollen it to 40 meters wide in places. The current runs fast and cold from mountain snowmelt. A man trying to cross while carrying equipment will struggle against that current. Castlas has positioned his 800 men in coordination with adjacent battalions of the 8th Division. They have prepared defensive positions over the past 4 days since the Italian invasion began. Trenches dug into the eastern bank, machine gun nests covering likely crossing points, observation posts in trees and elevated positions. These are not elaborate fortifications. The Greeks have had less than a week to prepare. There are no concrete bunkers, no extensive barbed wire, no minefields, just earthworks, sandbags, and the natural advantages of defending a river crossing. His orders come directly from divisional command. Delay the Italian advance as long as possible. High command needs time to mobilize additional reserves from across Greece. Time to establish deeper defensive lines in the Pindus Mountains to the east. No one has given him a specific timeline. The orders are to hold until ordered to withdraw or until the position becomes untenable. What Castlas does not know is that the entire Italian 25th Army Corps, over 42,000 men, is bearing down on the Kalamas River crossings. The 8th Infantry Division, all 15 battalions scattered across the Epirus frontier, approximately 15,000 men, stands between this Italian force and the Greek interior. They are outgunned, outnumbered, and out of time. 4 days ago, at 3 in the morning on October 28th, the Italian ambassador to Greece delivered an ultimatum to Prime Minister Ioannis Metaxas. The ultimatum demanded that Greece allow Italian forces to occupy unspecified strategic locations throughout the country. It was phrased as a request, but was clearly a demand for surrender. The ultimatum would expire at 6 a.m. Metaxas, a former general himself, a man who understood exactly what Italian occupation would mean, responded with a single word in Greek. Ohi, no. The word has already become a rallying cry. Ohi, no. Greece will not surrender. Greece will not submit. Greece will fight. By dawn on October 28th, Italian divisions were pouring across the Albanian border into northern Greece. The invasion had begun. The world's reaction was almost universal. Greece cannot possibly win. Britain, fighting alone against Germany after the fall of France, could spare no meaningful help. The United States was still neutral. The Soviet Union had a non-aggression pact with Germany. Greece stood alone. British military observers in Athens privately predicted total Greek collapse within a week. The Germans gave the Greeks perhaps 72 hours before the government would flee to Crete. But it is now November 2nd, and the Greeks have not collapsed. They have not sued for peace. They have not fled. Instead, the Greek forces have conducted a fighting withdrawal to natural defensive barriers, to the rivers, to the mountain passes, to the positions where terrain advantages might offset numerical disparity. And now, Major Dimitrios Castlas, 39 years old, commanding 800 men, stands in a forward observation post on the eastern bank of the Kalamas River, watching the western horizon through field glasses, waiting for the Italian vanguard to appear. It is a cold morning. The sky is grey, with the promise of rain. The Kalamas flows fast and dark, its surface occasionally broken by debris washed downstream. At 7:15 in the morning, the first Italian motorcycle reconnaissance units emerge from the tree line 2 kilometers west. They move cautiously at first, expecting ambush. When no fire comes, they grow bolder, They advance to within 500 meters of the western bank. Then 300 meters. They stop, dismount, begin surveying the river through field glasses. Castlas watches them. He does not give the order to fire. Not yet. Let them look. Let them report back that the Greeks seem to be a token force. By 8 in the morning, the first infantry columns appear. Not hundreds, thousands. Grey-green uniforms stretching back along the road from Albania. Infantry marching in column. Artillery pieces being wheeled forward. The mechanical rumble of armored vehicles. Castlas counts units out of habit. 1 battalion, 2 battalions, a full regiment, then another regiment. He stops counting when he reaches division strength. And still, they keep coming. The Italian 25th Army Corps has arrived at the Kalamas. Across the water, Italian officers gather at the western bank. They stand in clusters, pointing at the eastern bank, gesturing at maps, planning their crossing operation. They seem remarkably casual. Some have removed their helmets. One lights a cigarette. They have the bearing of men on a training exercise, not men preparing for combat. What the Italian officers are calculating is not whether they can cross the Kalamas. They are calculating logistics, how many boats they need, which crossing points can accommodate which units, how long it will take to get artillery across once the infantry has secured the eastern bank. They are planning administration, not battle. At midday, the Italian artillery begins, not a full bombardment, a demonstration. 6 guns firing ranging shots at Greek positions. The shells whistle overhead and detonate along the eastern bank. Geysers of mud and water erupt. Trees crack and splinter. But this is not destructive fire. This is intimidation fire. The Italian gunners are trying to frighten the defenders into abandoning their positions before serious fighting begins. The Greeks do not abandon their positions. Castlas watches the shells impact. He notes the battery position. He sends a runner to battalion headquarters with his observations, and then he waits for what he knows is coming next. At 1:30 in the afternoon, the 1st Italian infantry begin their crossing. 200 Italian soldiers wade into the Kalamas River at a point their engineers have marked as fordable. They move in assault formation, weapons held high, officers shouting encouragement from the western bank. The water reaches their thighs at first, then their waists. The current is stronger than expected. You can see it in their movements, the way they lean upstream to maintain balance. Their grey-green uniforms darken as they become soaked. They are 40 meters from the eastern bank, then 35 meters, then 30. Castlas watches them advance through his field glasses. He lets them commit fully to the crossing. Let them reach the point where turning back is as difficult as pushing forward. At 25 meters from the eastern shore, he gives the order to fire. The signal passes along the Greek line. 800 rifles from the 2nd 5 Battalion and adjacent units open fire in a coordinated volley. The sound is not dramatic. No Hollywood thunder. Just the sharp, rolling crack, crack, crack of rifle fire echoing across the water. The effect on the Italian crossing attempt is immediate and devastating. Italian soldiers drop into the current. Some go down instantly. Headshots, chest shots, men who die before they understand they have been hit. Others grab at wounds and fall, pulled under by the current. A few try to turn back, struggling against the river's flow. Those who keep pushing forward get within 15 meters of the shore. None reach it. The Greek rifle fire is methodical, disciplined. Aimed shots from men in prepared positions shooting at targets silhouetted against water. In 90 seconds, the crossing attempt is over. Bodies float downstream. The survivors scramble back to the western shore, fewer than half the number who entered the water, soaked, shocked, coughing up river water. On the western bank, Italian officers stand frozen, field glasses to their eyes, apparently unable to process what just happened. This was supposed to be a formality. Instead, those mountain peasants just killed or wounded 100 men in a minute and a half. Castlas watches through his binoculars as Italian officers regroup. He can see the moment when shock transitions to anger. They are calling forward more units. Messengers are running back from the river. The Italians are adapting. This is no longer a parade. This is combat. At 2 o'clock, the Italian artillery begins a proper bombardment. 12 guns this time, 2 full batteries firing for effect. The shells scream overhead in waves. They detonate in and around Greek positions. Trees explode, sandbags burst. The earth convulses with each impact. This is professional artillery fire. Coordinated, sustained, designed to suppress defensive positions. But Castlas has positioned his men in depth. When the Italian artillery opens up, Greek soldiers pull back from the riverbank to deeper, more protected positions. The Italian shells destroy the forward trenches, but hit mostly empty earth. The bombardment continues for an hour. Men crouch in their deep positions and endure it. Some pray, some curse, some simply wait. When the artillery stops, Greek soldiers reoccupy the forward positions, or what remains of them. They check weapons. They wait, because they know what comes next. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the Italians try again. 400 men this time, crossing at 2 different points simultaneously. The western bank erupts with machine gun fire, Italian machine guns, laying down covering fire. Bullets crack through the air above Greek positions. The Italians have learned. They are providing covering fire. They are crossing at multiple points to divide Greek defensive fire. The Greek defenders wait until the Italians are committed mid-river. Then they open fire. But 400 men crossing at 2 points cannot be stopped as easily as 200 at 1 point. Greek riflemen fire as fast as they can work their bolt actions, but there are too many targets. 50 Italian soldiers reach the eastern bank, then 70, then 100. They establish a foothold, a shallow beachhead centered on a grove of olive trees, about 30 meters from the water. It is not much, perhaps 40 meters wide and 30 meters deep, but it is a foothold. This is the critical moment. If the Italians can expand this beachhead, the Greek position collapses. Castlas makes the decision in seconds. He orders a counterattack. Greek soldiers from the reserve positions move forward. A reinforced company, perhaps 120 men. They leave their defensive positions and assault directly into the Italian beachhead. This is desperate tactics, attacking with rifles and bayonets, no artillery support, no covering fire. But the Italians in the beachhead are not dug in. They have been on the eastern bank for perhaps 5 minutes. They are still organizing, still trying to establish defensive positions. The Greek counterattack hits the beachhead like a physical blow. Close quarters, fighting in the olive grove, rifle fire at point-blank range, bayonets, rifle butts used as clubs, men grappling in the mud, the kind of combat that comes down to who wants it more. The Italians, who expected to be in Athens drinking wine by now, break first. Those who can disengage retreat into the river. Some drown trying to swim. Others throw down rifles and raise their hands. By 4 o'clock, the eastern bank is clear again. The beachhead is eliminated, but the cost has been high. The counterattack lost 40 men. If the Italians maintain this pace, The mathematics will eventually win. Castlas walks the line after the battle, checking positions, counting ammunition. His battalion has lost approximately 80 men in one afternoon. That is 10% of his strength. That night, exhausted Greek soldiers consolidate positions under cover of darkness. They redistribute ammunition from the dead to the living. They eat what rations they have, mostly bread and olives, water from the river. Across the river, Italian campfires spread across the western hills, the sound of engines, of artillery being repositioned, of an army preparing to hit back harder. November 3rd begins with Italian aircraft. 3 Savoia Marchetti SM-79 bombers appear at 8 in the morning. They are twin-engine medium bombers. Each carries a ton of bombs. They make their run over Greek positions, dropping their payloads. Explosions walk through the tree line. Trees vanish in clouds of splinters and smoke. But bombing against dispersed positions is imprecise. Most bombs hit empty ground. At 9:30, the Italian artillery begins again. 20 guns this time. The bombardment lasts 90 minutes. When it lifts, smoke blankets the eastern bank. And through that smoke, the Italians come, 800 men, a full battalion, crossing at 3 points simultaneously with heavy machine gun support. This is coordinated combined arms assault. Professional execution. Greek defenders open fire when the Italians are mid-river. But 800 targets cannot be stopped entirely. Italian soldiers begin reaching the eastern bank. They establish multiple beachheads spread along a kilometer of riverfront. Castlas commits his reserves. Greek soldiers assault the beachheads with desperate fury. Rifle fire, grenades, bayonet charges, fighting in smoke so thick that men sometimes kill their own by mistake. The beachheads are eliminated, but casualties mount. By afternoon, Castlas has lost another 70 men. November 4th brings rain, cold autumn rain that swells the Kalamas further. At 4 p.m., 30 Italian guns open up. Every artillery piece in the sector. The bombardment lasts 2 hours. When it stops, it is fully dark. Rain continues. Smoke hangs over the river. The Italians launch a night assault. Over 1,000 men crossing at 4 points, using darkness as concealment. The Greeks hear them before they see them. The splash of men wading, the clink of equipment, voices calling in Italian. Castlas gives the order to fire blind, to aim at sounds, at shadows. Muzzle flashes light the night like lightning. Tracer rounds arc across the water. The battle becomes chaos, a confused nightmare where no one can see more than 10 meters. Italian soldiers reach the eastern bank somewhere in the darkness. Fighting breaks out. Rifle fire, shouting, screams. At midnight, the rain intensifies. Thunder rolls. Lightning occasionally illuminates the battlefield in stark flashes. By 2 a.m., the firing dies down. The Italians pull back, carrying their wounded, leaving their dead. When dawn breaks on November 5th, Castlas counts his remaining force. Approximately 450 men. He has lost nearly half his battalion. But the Italians are still on the western shore. November 5th and 6th see the pattern continue. Bombardments, assaults, Greek defensive fire, Greek counterattacks. The Greeks fall back when pressed hard. They counterattack when the Italians overextend. They conserve ammunition religiously. They make every shot count. Castlas stops sleeping more than an hour at a time. He moves constantly along his shrinking line, appearing wherever pressure is greatest, encouraging men who look like they should be in hospital beds. On the evening of November 6th, a runner arrives from divisional headquarters with new orders and reinforcements. 2 companies from the 9th Infantry Division, approximately 400 men with full ammunition loads. The mathematics shift. November 7th. Reinforcements continue to arrive. Greek forces prepare for the transition from defense to offense. On November 8th, the Italian 25th Army Corps withdraws its bridgehead and pulls back from the Kalamas. The river crossing they were so confident would take hours has cost them a week and thousands of casualties. 6 days later, on November 14th, Greece launches its general counteroffensive. Not just the 8th Division, the entire Greek army. They cross into Albania. They push the Italians back 40 kilometers. What began as desperate defense at the Kalamas becomes relentless attack. The Italians, who have spent 6 days trying to cross east, are psychologically and tactically unprepared to defend west. Their positions face the wrong direction. Their artillery is sighted for offensive fire, not defensive. The Greek assault hits them with devastating effect. By mid-morning, the Italians are retreating, not withdrawing, retreating, falling back in disorder, abandoning equipment, leaving wounded behind. The first Axis defeat of World War II is not a German defeat. It is Italian, and it happens on the banks of the Kalamas River. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. What the Italian High Command did not fully understand on November 7th was that the Kalamas was not an isolated defeat. While the 8th Division was holding the river, other Greek units were achieving similar victories across the Epirus front. At Pindus, Greek mountain troops had mauled the Italian Julia Division so badly that it effectively ceased to exist as a combat unit. At Koritsa, Greek forces would soon capture the city and over 10,000 Italian prisoners. The entire Italian invasion was collapsing. Within 3 weeks, Greece would not merely halt the Italian advance. Greek forces would launch a general counteroffensive. They would push 40 kilometers into Italian-occupied Albania. They would capture city after city. They would inflict defeat after defeat on Mussolini's army. The strategic implications rippled across the world. In London, Winston Churchill, who had been preparing to write Greece's obituary, found himself instead composing messages of congratulation. Britain would send what limited support it could spare. Royal Air Force squadrons would deploy to Greece. But Churchill understood that Greece had done something no other nation had managed, stopped an Axis invasion and reversed it. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler watched the Italian disaster with growing alarm. Italy was supposed to be securing the Balkans while Germany prepared Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Instead, Italy was being humiliated. Hitler made a decision that would alter the war. Germany would intervene in the Balkans. Wehrmacht divisions would be diverted from Barbarossa to bail out Italy. Operation Marita, the German invasion of Greece, was scheduled for spring 1941. It would require significant forces. It would require time. That time came from Operation Barbarossa. The planned May 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union was delayed by approximately 4 to 5 weeks. Those weeks proved critical. German forces reached Moscow in December instead of November. They reached the Soviet capital in winter instead of autumn. They arrived with exhausted troops and stretched supply lines. Many historians argue that this delay, caused directly by Greek resistance at the Kalamas and beyond, cost Germany the Battle of Moscow. and losing Moscow cost Germany any chance of defeating the Soviet Union quickly. In Rome, Mussolini raged. He fired his army chief of staff. He demanded explanations for how his modern army had been stopped by Greeks with outdated weapons. But the facts remained. Italy had invaded Greece with overwhelming force on October 28th. By November 8th, Italian forces were retreating. The psychological impact was profound. For 18 months, the Axis had rolled over every opponent. Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, all had fallen in weeks or days. Greece fought for 6 months, and Greece won most of those battles. It proved the Axis could be beaten. That determination could defeat numerical superiority. That resistance was possible. For occupied Europe, for Britain standing alone, for the world watching, Greece provided something more valuable than military victory. Greece provided hope. Major Dimitrios Castlas survived the Battle of Elaia-Kalamas. He survived the Greek counteroffensive into Albania. In that winter campaign, he and the 2nd 5 Battalion fought their most famous action, the Battle of Hill 731, where 800 Greek soldiers held a strategic height against repeated Italian assaults, becoming one of the legendary defensive stands of the war. He survived the German invasion of Greece in April 1941, when the Wehrmacht finally intervened with overwhelming force. He survived the Axis occupation. He joined the Greek resistance and fought through the bitter years of occupation and the Greek Civil War that followed. Major Castlas died in 1966, at the age of 65. His obituary honored his service in multiple wars, his leadership of the 2nd 5 Battalion, his role in the defense of Greece. He lived to see Greece liberated, to see the nation he defended become free again. The men of the 8th Infantry Division, who held the Kalamas, came from villages across Epirus. Most were reservists. Many had families in the region they were defending. Their average age was in the 30s. Many were fathers. For them, the battle was not an abstract military operation. It was defense of home, defense of the specific valleys where their children lived. Their names are recorded on memorials across northwestern Greece. Small monuments in mountain villages that list 10 or 15 names from that community who fell at the Kalamas. Plaques in town squares. Lists of the honored dead carved into memorial walls. The last veterans of the 8th Division who fought at Elaia-Kalamas passed away in the early 2000s. With them went the living memory of those November days, the cold of the water, the sound of artillery, the desperate fights on the riverbank. Today, the Kalamas River still flows through Epirus. Small monuments mark the sites where Greek units defended the crossing celebrations. There is a stone marker on the eastern bank where Castlas established his command post. It lists the names of men from the 2-5 Battalion who died holding this ground. The battle is taught in Greek schools, the national holiday commemorating Greece's refusal to surrender to Italian demands. Outside of Greece, the Battle of Elaia-Kalamas is rarely mentioned. It is overshadowed by larger battles, forgotten in histories that focus on the major powers. Most World War II documentaries skip from the fall of France to the Battle of Britain to the invasion of the Soviet Union, never mentioning that Greece fought Italy from October 1940 to April 1941. But the Kalamas mattered. It mattered strategically because the Greek victory contributed to the chain of events that delayed Operation Barbarossa. It mattered psychologically because it was the first time an Axis power had been decisively defeated. It mattered morally because it showed that small nations could choose to fight rather than submit. The mathematics that said 15,000 Greeks could not stop 42,000 Italians at a river crossing remain as wrong now as they were in November 1940, because some equations cannot account for determination. Some calculations cannot measure courage. Some victories happen because soldiers decide that retreat is not an option and defeat is not acceptable. The Italians called them mountain peasants with old rifles. They were not entirely wrong about the rifles. Most weapons the Greek 8th Division carried were indeed outdated, but they were catastrophically wrong about the men carrying those rifles. If this story of courage and impossible mathematics moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm that these forgotten battles, these overlooked victories, deserve to be remembered. We're dedicated to rescuing stories like the Battle of Elaia-Kalamas from obscurity, stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things, stories that changed history but have been forgotten by history. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or country and tell us if someone in your family served in World War II. We'd love to hear their stories. And to everyone watching, wherever you are in the world, Happy New Year. May 2026 be a year where we remember the courage of those who came before us and find our own courage to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Thank you for ensuring that Major Dimitrios Castlas and the 15,000 men of the 8th Infantry Division who held the Kalamas River do not disappear into silence. They held the line when mathematics said they could not. They deserve to be remembered.